Hi Adam,
Oh, hey Hannah,
how are you
how's it
doing?
going? I'm surviving, thank you. Yeah, doing quite well actually. Yeah, it's
So,
nice to see you.
oh, nice to see you too. So what are you up to in these times when we're not at the railway?
Well, I'm down in Falmouth at the moment, so um, just I'm quite fortunate because I have a bit of work to keep me from going stir crazy, which is really good.
Great.
I kind of think of it as my lockdown project, but I've been building a garden with a couple of other guys, and it's been really good fun actually. Really productive and really satisfying, and also I get to dig a lot of holes and go have a go on the shovel, which is
Excellent.
something that I really miss on the railway.
Yeah.
So that's been really good. And on a side note, it means I can pay the rent as well, so that's also a good thing,
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
has been great.
So putting your railway skills
Um,
totally transferable to the garden project.
yeah, I like to
Absolutely.
think I'm getting the practice in whilst I'm not there, which is really good.
Yeah,
And
staying
then
in
when I'm
shape.
not working, yeah, absolutely. When I'm not working, I tend to be doing all sorts of different things, which it's been one of those things where I usually describe to people lockdown as I'm surviving, but actually I'm quite enjoying it. It's been really quite fun because I suppose it is what you make of it. And outside of work, I've been doing a lot of the things which I wish I could do when I'm working more and when lockdown isn't happening. So
Yeah,
things like running a lot more, reading a lot more, reading all the books that I've been wanting to read, um, baking, and then eating way too much of it. That's been a really good one. What else? Going for a lot of walks. Yeah, just playing guitar, playing a lot of music. Just yeah, lots of the things that I wish I could do more of when we're not in lockdown. So
yeah.
I've just been really enjoying myself. It's been
Oh,
great.
oh, that's really good to hear. Yeah, I think I think you're right. It's kind of as much as possible, kind of an opportunity, as well as a challenge. So yeah, sounds like you're definitely making the most of it. So
Well, trying to, definitely.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm sure again, like all of us, there's highs and lows of it.
Yeah.
I'm
It's
def
why it's quite nice to swing the sledgehammer around at work when I'm feeling particularly glum about being in lockdown.
Yeah, yeah. There's
It's
definitely
quite
highs
nice
and
to be,
lows with us here. So my children are quite small, and yeah, kind of on days when they're being amazing, it's brilliant, and days when they're being a little bit more challenging, it's yes, perhaps a bit more frustrating. So yeah. But the
yes,
idea
I can
of
imagine.
these chats is to kind of catch up with some of the people that we'd normally be spending time with at the railway, and perhaps similarly like don't really get enough of an opportunity to properly talk to, because obviously when we're at the railway, we're all kind of so busy doing so many things, and it's been really interesting with the people I've spoken to so far to kind of find out what it is about railways that kind of first captured their interest, and also kind of what brought them to Bodmin. So I don't really know any of those things for you. So I'm looking forward to finding out.
Yeah, well, I could talk a lot about my interest in railways, particularly steam engines, but I think my very first memory of trains was when we lived in Bournemouth when I was really young. Um, I think I was 2 or 3, and we used to go to the Moors Valley Railway,
Do you
which is a
know what?
little tiny little thing,
That's where
and I don't
I
really
grew up.
remember much of it from those days.
I grew up in Bournemouth, and I love
No way!
it as well.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, it's probably my very first interaction with steam engines. And I just remember thinking it's absolutely brilliant because there are lots of little tunnels on the railway,
Yeah,
and you get to sit on these tiny little wagon carriage things, and really hear the clickety clack of the coaches, and the whistles are really high pitched as well. And I just remember going through tunnels and going woo alongside these high pitched whistles, and yeah, just got really good memories of those days. So that was my very first interaction with railways, was back then. A few years later, my family and I ended up in Loughborough in Leicestershire. And there's a couple of railways which I particularly remember having a big influence on me as a young enthusiast back then. And one was the Battlefield Railway, which is in Shackiston, which I remember quite fondly going there with my grandparents. And then the other is the Great Central Railway in Loughborough, which is quite well known. And one particular memory is my granddad was gifted a driver experience course there for his 60th birthday, and I think I must have been about 4 or 5, quite young, but it was on an engine numbered 63601, and since then it's been my very favourite steam engine because I always know it as Grandad's engine. And I don't really have that many memories other than on the train, because we went along with him and we got to enjoy being behind the engine whilst he was driving it. They gave us custard and it was really hot, and I remember burning my mouth and not being very happy about it. But thank goodness that wasn't the decisive moment in my love of steam engines. I really enjoyed the day, apart from getting a burnt mouth on custard. But yeah, other than that, we just used to go on the Great Central quite a lot, and that was kind of the first railway I was properly into, if you like, the one I spent a lot of time around, because we only lived 10 minutes walk from Loughborough station. So I used to go down there and watch the steam engines whenever I could, and just great memories of being on the platform or going around the sheds when I was a kid. Yeah, so and that's quite a big fancy double tracked railway as well, so it was quite an experience for a 7 or 8 year old to enjoy. When yeah, that was really good fun, that. So, and then when I was about 8, we moved down to Cornwall, and I remember my very first visit to the Bodmin and Wentford Railway. Must have been in the year we moved down, but it was on the old diesel multiple unit that we used to have at the railway in the driving rain, and with my grandparents again. And just remember, it was a lot of fun, even though it was a diesel, even though it was raining. It was really good fun, and just been back countless times since then, as a customer. During my early years in Cornwall, to the point where when I was about 12, I thought I'd really like to go and volunteer there. It seemed like a great idea. So from the age of 12 to about 16, I volunteered on and off through my school years, mainly as a ticket inspector, which I really enjoyed, meeting all the customers and stamping the tickets with the clips. And that was, yeah, really nice early memories of the railway. And I did my work experience there when I was 15. My favourite memory from my work experience week was my day cleaning in the engine shed with another volunteer, Derek, who is a really nice chap, and was a really good representative of the railway for me as a young, nervous 15-year-old. But I remember really being excited about going into the sheds and cleaning the engines. And then at the end of the day, for the last trip of the line, they let me on the footplate, and that was the first time I'd experienced the full line on the footplate, and seeing the crew at work, and just I just couldn't really believe it. I was so excited to be on the steam engine, and just absolutely hooked me for the operational side of steam engines, because I'd always been a fan of watching them and sort of getting up close and smelling them and enjoying just everything about them and their grandeur, but I'd never been on the footplate properly, so that was a real eye-opener for me. and I sort of drifted a little bit away from the railway when I was doing my A levels. But in 2017, the railway hosted Tornado,
Yeah.
which was one of the best railway events I've ever been to, and that
Wow.
just absolutely hooked me. I went. I used the excuse of my mum's birthday to say we've got to go to the steam railway and go on the Tornado.
Who was that a birthday treat for again? Maybe more so.
Probably. Yeah, and that just kick-started my well, it just reminded me of how much I loved being at the railway when I was a bit younger, and I just really wanted to get back involved again. So I got in touch with Chris, who was manager at the time, I think, and he and I said I wanted to be a trainee fireman, which had been something that had been brewing in my mind since going on the footplate on my work experience, and then going and seeing the Tornado with my mum was just the moment I'd been waiting for to get me back involved. So I started the next year as a trainee fireman, and it was kind of the best of both worlds, really, because I also got a job in the cafe at the same time at the steam railway. So I was at the railway sort of 4 or 5 days a week, usually 4 days in the cafe and 1 day on the steam engine, and just I absolutely loved it, absolutely brilliant. And did as many turns as I could, sometimes twice a week, just sort of if there was a space on the engine, I'd say, oh, can I have a go? And they'd usually let me on, which was a real privilege. And yeah, so I was a trainee fireman, started in June 2018, and yeah, I qualified last year as a fireman on the 11th of June 2019, and was one of the best days of my life, quite honestly. It's just felt like a big culmination of a lot of work, a lot of miles on the bus, in the car to get to the railway, early
Yeah.
starts, and just it was absolutely brilliant. And I love it. I love being on the engine. I love being with the people at the railway. It's just absolutely brilliant. The smell, the satisfaction of getting it right when you're going up the bank with 5 coaches, and it's just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I feel like it's the start of a journey as well. It's not just like I've qualified as a fireman, I'm done now. It's definitely not that. One of the things I most love about the railways is every time I go, I learn so much, and I love going somewhere where I'm so stimulated mentally. It's just brilliant.
Wow.
There you go. That's
Okay.
that's a lot about railways and me.
Yeah, no, that was amazing. That's absolutely amazing. I've got 2 things from that I want to ask you about. I think I probably know the answer to this first one. I was going to say, after kind of all of that time, kind of, wanting to kind of get onto the engine, really probably from being a much younger child, actually. I mean, you mentioned about kind of from when you went on the footplate when you were 15, but was the process of kind of learning to be a fireman, like, was it kind of what you had expected? Like, how was the actual kind of process of learning? Was it kind of all positive, or was it kind of challenging or frustrations? How was the actual learning bit?
Yeah. So, wow. Yeah. I think I'd always admired the size and the just the noise and the intensity of a steam engine, and the just how it spurts steam sometimes unknowingly, and it just makes me jump sometimes. When I was a kid, I used to always hold my breath when I thought the whistle was going to go, and would still shake a bit when when it went. So I think oh, I remember the first few times I was quite nervous, to be honest. I'm not going to lie. Getting on and thinking, wow, that fire is really, really hot, or this is really heavy machinery, and I don't know if I'm capable of ever knowing how to get it to do what I want. It was just, yeah, it was quite intense at first. And I mean, it's definitely not. I mean, I'd always come at it from a hobby point of view, and then getting on a steam engine and realizing they're really, I mean, potentially in the wrong hands, very dangerous machines. And if you don't know what you're doing, then you've really got to, you need to know what you're doing in order to make one work well and not go boom, I suppose. So I think that was a very eye-opening experience on the first few times. It's just getting my head around the seriousness of what I was doing, and also respecting the engine, because it's some of them at the railway, we've got 120-year-old locos, and just reminding myself that these are almost time machines, really. Step on one and you are going back in time, and you've got to really respect the fact that this is old technology, but also it's fire breathing technology. So yeah, a very steep learning curve in that sense. I think my abiding memory of learning whilst I was a trainee was just when I was getting better, it was just the ultimate satisfaction of getting it right, and keeping the needle on the red mark on the pressure gauge, and coming into the station with exactly the right water level, and just, yeah, I don't think I've ever done anything so satisfying in that sense. It's just brilliant getting it right. And that was one of the things which I most loved about coming back. When it didn't go right, I would speak to the fireman and the driver about what I did, and I'd slowly learn to identify when it was going wrong before it was going wrong. And that's one of the main things is knowing how to deal with something when it's going wrong. And that's yeah, just getting it right is very satisfying. And
yeah. So you talked a bit about kind of that learning from people. Who were you kind of learning with and alongside? Because obviously there's kind of a great team of people, and kind of on the footplate there's, you know, people with years and years of experience. So kind of how did it feel learning from those guys?
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's another thing. It's I had a lot of respect for the locos themselves, but even more respect for some of the guys that were working on the engines. As you say, there's both youth and experience on the engines, and you can learn something from everyone. My very first turn on the footplate was with the gentleman Tony Hallworth. And I remember it vividly. Just him being the calm and just wonderful presence that he is on the footplate, and just, although I was nervous at that point, I was very much, I knew I didn't have to be scared, because I was with Tony, and he just had that presence about him that made you feel that way, even when you're not very experienced or whatever, like I was at the time. And I learned a lot of him. I didn't get many turns with him, unfortunately, but he's, yeah, it's a pleasure to have been able to fire for such a gentleman and such talented engineman as well. And I love hearing stories from some of the other guys who got to be on the footplate with him over the years, and just see him work his magic on a steam engine. So I'm definitely humbled to have worked with Tony on steam engines. But then at the other end of the scale, you've got people like Will and Tom, two of the younger guys, and people like Ashley as well, who are really, really switched on guys, who are talented enginemen in their own right, who I just have massive respect for, and get on with really well. And it's always a pleasure getting on the footplate with anyone, but particularly with guys similar age, and you think, wow, it's quite fun that you and I, who are, I don't know, a combined age of 50 years, are in charge of this stunning steam engine and this train. And it's a pleasure to be able to learn and work with people like that who you're friends with and who just have so much talent to both witness and for you to learn off as well.
Yeah, we are fortunate, aren't we? We've got a really good kind of a really good team of people, which I think is one of the things that makes it kind of really hard at the moment, because we're not there spending that time with people and, you know, kind of missing those connections. But also one of the things that's really positive is actually, you know, we've got that group of people who are also kind of passionate and so dedicated. You know, that's real hope for kind of for what happens next as well, I think. So that's actually something else that I wanted to ask you about. Obviously, at the moment, these are incredibly strange times and, you know, really challenging ones for the railway. So any of your thoughts on that would be great, but kind of possibly kind of thinking beyond that, you know, someone like you who's kind of got on board and you know, is kind of taking on the baton a bit in terms of kind of, you know, keeping those engines running and you know, the next generation, as it were. What would you like to see for the future of the railway?
God, that Big is a loaded question. Wow. Cool. Yeah. Break it down a bit. It is a very, very difficult time, yes. And I think the abiding sense is just, we've just got to hope that it passes soon. And I have full trust in the people in charge of the railway and how it's in that it will be absolutely fine once we get through this, and we'll be able to pick ourselves up again and be back to doing what we love and serving people that love coming and seeing steam engines in Cornwall.
Yeah.
In terms of the future, once we're over this little speed bump, it's just so exciting, really. Obviously, there are a few young guys around at the railway, young people who have an abundance of passion. Is just trying to get a few more young people around that share that and try and advocate the railway to young people to ensure that we can pick up all the things that some of the older guys, the more experienced guys can teach us, and then go forward with that and keep learning ourselves and just just carry on the legacy of people like Tony, but also all the people who went before him who operated engines and built railways and built locomotives and things. I think that's a big one, just hoping and trying to get more young people involved. I'd love to see the railway in Wadebridge one day. And that's something which has been on the cards for quite a few years. And as with any extension of a steam railway, it's always going to be difficult. But it's just really exciting and really great to know that there are people at the railway who are pushing on with this and really serious and excited about the prospect of extending the railway to Wadebridge one day, which I think is great. And I look forward to the day when hopefully I can fire engines down the Camel Valley into Wadebridge again, just like so many have done before me, not just on a bike. That would be great. I suppose on a slightly more academic and slightly serious note, steam engines are coal-fired generally, and I think in the light of the growing sort of environmentalism movement, I think we should be taking that very seriously as a steam railway, and we have a responsibility as a heritage attraction hosting people of all ages to try and do our bit. So I think one of the things which I've been thinking about over the last year or so is that it would be great if the railway could potentially do their bit to look at alternative fuels or just ways of mitigating the environmental impact of coal. Not that steam railways over the grand scheme of the entire world have very much impact at all, but in terms of running responsibly into the future, I think it's a serious point that we should be looking into is trying to mitigate the impacts of CO2 and doing our bit to look after the environment. And I think we have a really potentially really exciting opportunity to test out alternative fuels on our engines, or just to pioneer, because obviously steam locomotives were pioneered by Trevithick in Cornwall, and they've been constantly developing since 1804 or whenever it was that the first one ran. And I think we can have a hand in that, and that would be an incredible legacy to leave behind when I'm old and breaking and can't do as many things as I used to. If we can say that we were able to take railways into the next I suppose the next stage of development, really, in terms of finding fuels that mean we can still do our passion whilst still representing history, I think that would be amazing. So I think that's something which I'd love to be a part of and see the railway looking into over the next few years. Just to give all railways, but particularly the Bobbin and Mumford, a sustainable future. Lots of waffle about environmentalism, but it's something that we shouldn't ignore, I think.
I think like you said, that kind of that ingenuity and that kind of pioneering history of the railways, came from Cornwall. So we'd be kind of following on from that legacy, to an extent. And I think that's really compelling in terms of kind of getting people interested and thinking differently. And I think, whilst possibly your thoughts on that may be kind of different or maybe a bit more controversial, you've also talked really passionately about the fact that what we're trying to do is have that respect for history and heritage, and where all of this has kind of come from and what's come before. So I don't think anyone could doubt your kind of your understanding and your appreciation for kind of both sides of it, that kind of the past, but also really importantly kind of the future, so that well, my kids are already kind of keen railway visitors now and love kind of hearing the trains and seeing the trains. You're kind of maybe a bit of a way off that, but you want that for for future generations. So yeah, no, that's great.
I think it's just all about ensuring that the railway has a sustainable future, because it would be a real shame if we got through the coronavirus epidemic and then had the floor taken out from underneath us by not being able to source coal or environmental restrictions and things. So I think it's the steam railways have always faced challenges over the years, big challenges, but they've always come together and got through them, and I think that yes, with the right leadership and the right initiatives and a buttload of enthusiasm, I think we can through this too. So this remaining positive and doing all that we can to ensure sustainability and futurity for the railway.
Yeah. And then, so one final thing, because I realised that I can't any longer kind of talk about kind of young people like I'm one of them, sadly. But, you're definitely kind of closer to that than me. So what are the kind of the opportunities, or the ways that we can think differently in terms of kind of communicating with younger people about why they should care, or what might be in it for them in terms of kind of getting involved with the railway in whatever way, and maybe new ways?
Yeah. So I think part of the way that I am as a person, but also one of the main things that I look for anywhere is relationships with people. So I think the first thing I would say is that for those that were even vaguely interested in joining the railway as a volunteer or more, or even just visiting, is that getting to know the people that you work alongside or that run the place is just one of the great things about railway. And I think that's something that all railways have is an abundance of characters, interesting, quirky, sometimes strange and controversial, but importantly people that you can form friendships with and just enjoy spending your time with whilst doing something that you love, which I would then say that there are so many things that one can do at a steam railway, to that though it's a place for those who have all sorts of talents, and even those who think they don't have talents, it's somewhere that you can go and be useful, because that's what a lot of people want, is to be useful and be able to use the things that they're good at,
and be part
and
of
I would say and be part of a team, with people that you love spending time with. I think that's one of the big things, that it's a diverse place. It's not just about a steam engine on a train. There's all sorts of things that you can do, and I think that would be one of the main things as well. What was the other part of your question? I think
about kind of how we kind of reach those people, those the youth.
The kids, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I would say it's as we are now, the world is becoming very technologically oriented, and I think the outreach needs to be we need to be making sure that we can reach out to those people, and a lot of that can be done through social media, and through the website, and through just advertisement, basically on screens, I think is what I'm trying to say. It's where people spend a lot of their time these days, is staring at screens, and I think that despite the fact we're representing history, I think we can always do our best to focus on evolving with the times, I suppose, in a similar way to what I was saying earlier about potentially looking into alternative fuels and things like that. I suppose there's always things like volunteers fairs to get involved with as well, and there's always ways to market the railway in the public eye, and I suppose I would just say that we should, well, not that we're not doing any of that, obviously, but I think there's always room for at least a few percent more effort, and I think that's going to be really important, is that showing people that we're willing to step out and show them how much we love what we do, can be a big positive to them, thinking, oh yeah, I'd actually really like to go and enjoy some of my spare time with people who are passionate about something, even if they're not quite as involved in the railways, or not as enthusiastic about the actual railway. It's I suppose I'm just going back to the same point that I made earlier. It's nice to go and spend time with those that are really passionate.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Again, lots of waffle about that, sorry.
No, that's absolutely fine. That was brilliant. And I think I think I knew already how passionate you were about the railway, but I think, you know, anyone kind of listening to the way that you've spoken about it, couldn't doubt that either. So you're definitely one of the passionate people that people should be coming and working alongside. So thank you. It's been really great to talk to you. And I think that you know, there's a real kind of hope and positivity for the future, you know, with people like you on the team. So thanks for that.
I'm humbled. Thank you. I often think of myself as underqualified, but then I think anyone with a lot of enthusiasm can do quite a lot. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, take care. And hopefully, like you say, we will all be kind of back at the railway soon, when we're kind of safe to come together in person again. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you then. Thanks, Adam. Bye.